responsibilities, and it's always good to go over them so we know what we're doing. Today, we have one speaker today. Madam Timer, would you please set the clock for 8 to 10 minutes? Her name is Darlene Markworth. She is doing the interpretive reading, the oratorical speech, which again I'll repeat is 8 to 10 minutes. The speech title is November 19th, 1863. I don't believe it was raining that day, but it could have been. Our speaker today has decided to finish up the manual begun before the event of Pathways. Today's speech, plus one more, will do that. Today's speech is to be an oratorical speech, a reading from one of the greatest speeches presented to the world some time past. Before getting to the actual speech, but part of the time allotted, Darlene will read an explanation or summary, if you will, of the speech. Then Darlene will conclude by reciting and reading the actual speech. 8 to 10 minutes is allotted, but the actual speech includes an introductory material which will actually be closer to 7 minutes. So timer, I stand corrected. Please set the clock for 6 to 8 minutes. Sometimes we have changes, that's all right. We're not dopesters around here. Oh boy, I get to put that down again. Yes. Please help yourself to some brownies and welcome Darlene Markworth, Distinguished Postmaster. The speech, November 1963. Shall I say 1863? Talk about stuck on words.
Whatever I have is contagious. I'll stay over here and I'll breathe on anyone.
272 words, 3 minutes long. Yet the Gettysburg Address is unarguably one of the greatest pieces of rhetoric in American history. Dr. J. Rufus Fears, one of the great modern orators, argues that the Gettysburg Address, along with the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, formed the 3 founding documents of American freedom, and I have to agree. The Battle of Gettysburg left 8,000 men dead. The bodies were too numerous to bury properly, and many were at first placed in shallow graves. Weeks after the battle, heads and arms were sticking up through the ground, and the smell of rotted flesh was sickening. Money was raised for proper reburial, and it was decided that the new cemetery should be dedicated to sweeten the air of Gettysburg, to solemnize this place of death. As was traditional, a great orator, in this case Edward Everett, was asked to give a solemn and grand speech as a memorial to the fallen men. Lincoln was asked 2 months later, almost as a casual afterthought. He was to add a few remarks to Everett's function, much like the man with ceremonial scissors who cuts the ribbon. Legend has it that Lincoln's remarks were the product of pure inspiration, penned on the back of an envelope on the train chugging its way to the soon-to-be-hallowed grounds of Gettysburg. On the day of the dedication, Everett kept the crowd enthralled for 2 full hours. He must not have been a Toastmaster. Lincoln got up, gave his speech, and sat down before the photographer had even finished setting up to take a picture. There was a long pause before anyone applauded. And then the applause was scattered and polite. Not everyone immediately recognized the magnificence of Lincoln's address, but some did. And in a letter to Lincoln, Everett praised the president for his eloquent and concise speech, saying, "I should be glad if I could flatter myself that I came as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes." And of course, in time, we have come to fully appreciate the genius and beauty of the words spoken that day. Dr. Pierce argues that Lincoln's address did more to memorialize the fallen soldiers at Gettysburg. It accomplished nothing short of transforming the entire meaning of the Civil War. There were no details of the battle mentioned in the speech, no mentioning of the soldiers' names, of Gettysburg itself, of the South, nor the Union, states' rights, nor secession. Rather, Lincoln meant the speech to be something far larger, a discourse on the experiment testing whether the government can maintain a proposition of equality. At Gettysburg, the Constitution experienced a revolution, a transformation. The first birth has been tainted by slavery. The men of both North and South lying in the graves at Gettysburg had made an atoning sacrifice for this great evil. And the Constitution would be reborn, this time living up to its promises of freedom and equality for all. The speech. Fourscore 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men were created equal. We are now engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that this nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggle here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little know nor long remember what we say here, but they will never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated to the unfinished work which they fought here, to have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from those honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave a last full measure of devotion, that these dead might not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new rebirth of freedom, that the government, for the people, by the people, of the people, shall not perish.